Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of SHU Outdoors. My name is Mick. I'm your host. And today we're going to do a follow-up video on Michael Thompson, the AB dropout who turned informant, who got out of jail and got convicted for unemployment fraud of some degree or another and landed up back in prison. Well, I have discovered where he's being housed in the California state prison system, and he's actually already been up for parole on the new sentence that he received, and he was denied. Today we're going to do a reaction to this gentleman's channel, and he'll introduce himself. So without further ado, let's go ahead on and get into it.
Hey folks, my name is Renee Enriquez, and you are watching Uncensored.
This is Renee Enriquez. Nickname Black Hand of the Mexican Mafia. Prison gang politics.
Today, we're going to do a little profile on an old buddy of mine by the name of Michael Lynn Thompson. A lot of you may know the name and recognize it immediately, as he has a large social media footprint. He had his own YouTube site. He did a couple of interviews with Vlad TV, came on the MSNBC Lockup Raw. He did the Michael Prency's podcast and started his own channel by the name of Tree Frog, I believe. And there have always been some kind of controversy about Michael Thompson. You know, a lot of people criticize him and call him the Wes Watson of the Aryan Brotherhood. And I won't talk disparagingly about Mike. I know him very well. I met him in Lancaster at...
Well, he might not talk disparagingly about him, but I'm going to give you my rundown on this guy and the way I see him. He committed 2 murders, got 45 years, probably 45 years to life in the California prison system. Turned informant on the Aryan Brotherhood. Now, it's important to note that when he joined the Aryan Brotherhood, he understood that there's no retirement plan. So it's not like he joined up for like 5 or 10 years. It's a lifelong commitment when you join up with that organization. And when something went bad, I would imagine that they actually had a hit out on him for something, and he realized that they had a hit out on him, so he dropped out and then started cooperating against the Aryan Brotherhood, and then spun it into such a way that he was being noble because they were doing something that he just couldn't accept. It's much more likely that he dropped out because they had a hit on him because they found out something about him that they didn't like, and then he spun it into such a way that he could still have a career after prison about doing podcasts and so on and so forth, because he was such a noble guy. He just couldn't get down with some of the things they were doing. Then when he got out of prison, he reoffended again, unemployment fraud, and I think he got 8 years in prison. He's actually been up for parole already and was denied, and this gentleman is going to go ahead and get into it.
When I was housed there after returning from court. In fact, he was my next door neighbor, and I liked him. We took a liking towards each other. And we used to talk through the vent.
I bet you guys did. You cut from the same cloth, basically.
What I was going through, because I was cooperating at the time. He had finished his cooperation early on.
Told everything you knew on everybody you knew, anything to tell anybody on.
Mike Thompson was an Aryan Brotherhood commission member who dropped out of the AB early on after his participation in that specific organized crime group. He was originally convicted of, I believe it was 2 murders.
And it's important to note, the Aryan Brotherhood out of California, yeah, they got Aryan in their name and Brotherhood, but make no mistake, they're not there to protect the white race. They're there to exploit and dominate and get over on the white race, all right, by way of any number of different activities they got going on. So don't be fooled by the name Aryan Brotherhood. Now, I want to make an important note here. I've did 25 years in prison. And if white guys were getting robbed from their commissary or getting beat up or something just because they was white, I would be the first one who organized a crew of white prisoners to fight against that. That would be a noble cause, okay? Something that was a necessary evil. But what these guys do and what he did, they're not there protecting the white race from other people trying to take advantage of them. They're there exploiting their own white race. Okay, it's predominantly in the state of California. They're in the federal prison system now also, and they have been for quite some time, obviously. But the feds is a whole nother ball game from the state of California. So I know a lot of them just got airlifted out of California recently, like 2 Scoops and some of his co-Ds, and they're going to be placed in the feds. When they get to the feds, they're going to have somewhat of a rude awakening. Yeah, the AB, the Aryan Brotherhood, the brand, they're in the feds, but they're not controlling things like they are in California. They maybe have an aspect of control with their followers, but in the feds, you have serious, hard-hitting organizations that are not intimidated by the Aryan Brotherhood or any of their do-boys, and they will be met with strong resistance, okay, if they go 2 Scoops and his co-Ds just got relocated into the feds over the last month or so. And if they go in there with the mentality like they're going to run everything for the white race and the feds like they are in California, they're going to be met with a rude awakening. This ain't 1970s and 80s where the brand, had this mystique around them. No, there's several other. Specifically, I can think of one. I did a video on them, the SAC, the Soldiers of Aryan Culture. And they have a whole lot of hard hitters, and basically it's a skinhead-like organization, and they're not going to be intimidated by the brand. They done went at it with them before. And really the brand is a small handful of people, okay? We'll see how that plays out, and if it becomes necessary, I'll definitely do an update how they're interacting in the California system. But I think it's a misnomer. Like, they were complaining about their conditions, and they chose that. And 2 Scoops, he's a brand member out of California. He pled guilty with the understanding that he would serve his sentence in the feds. But a lot of people's got a misunderstanding about the feds. They got holes. They'll put you in the hole with a shower and just forget about you. You know what I mean? So it's not like a cupcake system by any stretch of the imagination. Let's go ahead and get back into what this guy's got to say.
Denied participation in, which is surprising in and of itself, right? That Mike Thompson went to the California Board of Prison Hearings after serving 45 years and was able to assert his innocence in the crimes, never accepting responsibility for participation, and to be granted parole and not receive criticism from the governor's reversal panel. In fact, he breezed right through. He breezed right through the parole process. Governor Newsom let him go during the time I was incarcerated, and it gave me hope. It really did give me hope that when they released Michael Thompson, somebody who equaled my notoriety, I believed that I was going to receive parole soon after that, but I didn't. In Michael Thompson's case, the governor approved his parole. He was released, and he was indicted later on for unemployment, EDD fraud. I mean, it's well publicized. There are a lot of articles and YouTubers, content creators that did segments on him. Michael Thompson became involved in a fraud scheme in which they enrolled multiple homeless individuals in for unemployment benefits. And a lot of the evidence revealed that some of those signatures and handwritten notes were in Michael's hand. He was ultimately...
Now, you hear people talk about how intelligent this guy is and this and that and next thing, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a degree of intelligence with him, but for you to do 45 years in prison, get lucky enough for the governor of the state of California to sign off, because it's a big deal when you have life sentence and you got to go through all that in California, and to actually get out. And within a couple of years, not only try to make a career out of his ex-prison time by way of YouTube and social media, but become a life coach. That's what he was doing. And then allow himself to get caught up in anything where he could end up back in a prison cell. I have to really question this guy's alleged intelligence. And I'm not particularly impressed. And I definitely wouldn't want him to be a life coach for me as an ex-offender. I wouldn't want to take any advice from this guy, because it seems like every decision he makes is kind of a bad decision when you take it all in proper context.
convicted and received a prison sentence. He's currently housed in Kern Valley State Prison, actually, serving his sentence. And unbeknownst to the general public, Michael Thompson was up for parole recently. On December 17th, 2025, Michael Thompson received a NEPD review. That's a nonviolent eligibility parole date, right? So anybody convicted of a nonviolent offense is eligible for parole, right? You have to serve the base term. In fact, the nonviolent offender parole review process for a determinately sentenced person. A nonviolent offender parole review is a process in which the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation refers certain determinately sentenced persons convicted of nonviolent offenses to the board for review and possible release. Mike was eligible for that, right? He was eligible for this process, and he was denied. He was denied. You know, the process is when a determinately sentenced nonviolent person will be referred to the Board of Parole hearings for review. At least 35 days before a person's NPED, they will be referred to the Board of Parole for a review and possible release if the person is more than 180 days from the earliest possible release date. Incarcerated persons will be provided written notice of the outcome of the referral decision by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So 35 days before the 160 days. So he's getting close to getting out. Mike is short to the house and may already be released. I don't know. But he was referred to the nonviolent parole review panel and was reviewed by a deputy commissioner. During that process, they notify victims, the district attorney's office, so they can submit opposition letters to his parole or support his parole. In this case, I believe that the BPH, the Board of Commissioners, would not take a chance at all on Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson has destroyed his credibility with the Board of Prison Hearings. In fact, he might be.
Do you think? All right. This guy has no credibility whatsoever, man. You know, let's discuss a word. It's called snitching. All right. Tattletelling, informer, etc. Now, let's say you're a law-abiding citizen. You've been a law-abiding citizen your whole life. You're 50, 60 years old, and you see somebody trying to steal your car out in your driveway. Well, if that individual calls the police on someone in that circumstance, I don't consider that snitching. This person's a law-abiding citizen. Okay, they're not involved with any kind of life or crime. Okay, they see somebody trying to steal their vehicle in their front lawn. They don't proclaim to be a tough guy. Okay, you know, or a combatant, and they call the police, and the police arrives and arrests the person, or person gets away or whatever. But they call the police. Is that snitching? Well, in my opinion, I don't think so. Okay, I would say no, it's not, because that person's a law-abiding citizen. He's not that they're not involved in a life of crime, and they're utilizing the police services for what they're there for. Now, this is what I would consider being a tattletale, a no-good, low-down informant. You and your co-D, you're involved in a life of crime. You and your co-D, or 2 or 3 co-Ds, you happen to be one of them, go and commit a crime. You get busted. Okay, you're looking at 20 years, but they tell you, hey, we can whittle this down to 3 or 4 or 5 years if you tell us everybody that was involved in this crime with you. And you decide to inform and tail and become a tattletale. Okay, you are, in the most classical sense of the term, an informant. All right, because you were living a life of crime and you got busted and you spilled the beans on your co-defendant. That is the Webster Dictionary, definition of an informant. And that's exactly what this guy is. All right. Both of these guys. Okay. You go check this guy's channel out. I mean, if you want to, but he's an informant. Okay. He spilled the beans on all of his co-Ds, and I'm sure he'll spin some kind of noble narrative why he chose to do that. But the truth of the matter is, individuals think that they're cut like that until it goes bad. and then all of a sudden they have a reconsideration of their life choices. So this guy missed, and he was a buddy of Michael Thompson. Michael Thompson was cooperating on the Aryan Brotherhood, and this guy was cooperating on the Mexican Mafia. So it was like two peas in a pod type of situation. He does kind of level a little bit of criticism towards Michael Thompson, like he's in a position to talk. At least he wasn't so stupid to get caught back up in another crime and go back to prison. So I guess that's like one check in the positive box for this guy. But Michael Thompson, he did exactly the opposite. That's the reason why I'm so hard on the dude. I don't like what he did. He went to prison for 2 murders, became an AB member, owned a commission, dropped out, told everything he knew, got out of prison after 45 years and continued committing crimes. See, this is the type of guy that makes the parole board just want to start hitting everybody for what he did. His implications are much bigger than him. It affects everybody who's going to go up for parole at a later date, who's doing 25 or 30 years to life or whatever. They may not want to just give people parole after this because of something this guy did. And you got to remember, the governor's parole commission signed off on it after he made the parole board and passed the psych interview and all this stuff that he had to do in order to even have a real chance at making the parole. So they all signed off on it, and within like 2 years of him being out of prison, he's right back in prison for committing fraud. So that's really why I'm so hard on this dude. He's not a good dude. That's just my opinion of it.
Pariah to them. They took a chance, and that may reflect on, the people that afforded him that opportunity, the governor's office, the review panel, the BPH. They do not like to make mistakes, particularly when lifers recidivate. Mike Thompson served 45 years. He obviously, in the board's eyes, hoodwinked them by professing to be rehabilitated. And
absolutely,
he's changed some of his ways, but some he hasn't, obviously. He's made some serious errors in judgment, and that came back to bite him on the ass, as evidenced by his current term of imprisonment and incarceration. There are some other things he's got to overcome. I'm certain that Mike's going to come back and make another social media appearance. I think that everybody wants to hear what he has to say, but one of the problems that Mike has is not accepting responsibility for his actions, right?
To me, the guy has no credibility whatsoever.
Participation in the eliminations that he was convicted of initially. I don't know what he said in this parole hearings, if he accepted responsibility for his participation in the activities during his tenure as an AB member. But even in this process, he called it an error in judgment and never accepted responsibility. In fact, he took it to trial. He was offered a deal. He took it to trial and was convicted. And I think that's the credibility issue is going to haunt him forever. I remember one instance, I watched an interview that he participated in, and he said that he dispatched, his word was dispatched, 14 Northern Hispanic inmates with a baseball bat.
The guy is a stone cold liar. That's my take on Michael Thompson. He's a stone cold liar, a tattletale, an informant who couldn't make the cut, all right, has never accepted responsibility for any of his actions, poor judgment, this and that, spins tall tales. The dude's just not a good dude, and that's my take on it.
I knew to be not true, right? There are some other instances. In fact, a lot of them, where he went on social media platforms and made these profound and outrageous claims, right? And it affected his credibility.
Zero credibility in my book.
The Wes Watson of the AB and
Wes Watson of the AB
tales that he made up, and I think that's really serious when it comes to social media. I mean, look, this is social media. You can say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and nobody really cares, right? I mean, I personally care about credibility, right, and the veracity of my word. And I think that if Mike's...
Yeah, if you don't have credibility, you can put anything you want out on social media, but are people going to take you serious or put heed in what you say? I'm an ex-criminal, man. I did my time like a man. I don't even jaywalk no more. I don't do anything that could land me in a hot water with the police, because if I get arrested and these hit any screen, then my history's going to pop up, and I'm going to be subject to all kind of extra scrutiny, man. I'm clean. I'm off of paper, man. I'm living a great life down here in Florida. I just wouldn't do anything to jeopardize my freedom, and I would never intentionally make a misstatement to my audience. If I do something, or if I do say something that turns out to be a slight misstatement, I'm going to correct it. And I also stand corrected on something. It appears that Aryan Brotherhood members out in California, one or two of them, do have their own YouTube channel via way of their wife or whatever. And what they don't realize, when they get to the feds, they'll take your phone privileges for a year for any little infraction, all right? I lost my phone privileges, email, commissary, and visiting for 40 years. I got the documentation to prove it. I only had a 10-year sentence. They turned it 30 years past my maximum expiration date. Because I was in a position a few times I had to defend myself. And, you know, I'm not saying I was right or wrong, but that's what happened. They took all of my privileges for 40 years for a 10-year sentence. So a lot of these guys may be in for a rude awakening with these YouTube channels or being housed in the feds now, tucked out of California. I think a guy named Two Scoops, he had a YouTube channel where he would call his wife up. She would record the conversation and ask him questions, and then they would post it on social media with like an AI type of background or something like that. And he might have got that off in California, but when he gets to feds, once they catch word that he's doing that, which I'm sure they already know, they're going to tell him don't do it no more. And if he does it, they'll take his phone for 2 or 3 years. And then if he tries to do it with a cell phone, his ass to go right to the hole. Okay, you got a lot of cell phones in federal prisons, but the higher you go up the chain, you know, when you get to a United States penitentiary, I'm not going to say there's no cell phones in there, but they're few and far between, because if you let dudes in U.S. penitentiaries have access to all kind of contraband cell phones, all kind of horrible things will be happening on the streets. The lower in security you go, the more that is flowing. Okay, the higher in security you go, the less is flowing. And when you get to a United States penitentiary, I did 9+ years on a 10-year sentence, man. I never saw one cell phone in the United States penitentiary. Now, it's true, I've been out now free and clear from that whole mayhem and confusion for about 4+ years. So from like 2012 until 9.5 years later, I didn't see a cell phone in the United States penitentiary. I'm not going to say they were there, but I was in the know. I had gambling tickets, moonshining operations, all kind of things going on. And if there would have been cell phones available, I would have at least known where one was. Now, I'm not saying they weren't one or two that was on the super down low, but they weren't everywhere. I was in FCI Miami. I mean, every other person had a cell phone. Okay, because it's a lower security and it was more flowing. Higher security, there's not nearly as much flowing. That includes cigarettes. The only thing there's a lot of flowing is Suboxone and K2. Everything else is very, very carteled and limited. So let's go ahead on and get back into it. I just wanted to give you that little bit of tidbit of info for your own files.
Going to be taken as a serious creator that he has to own up to some things and just put it on the table. You know, that's just the way it is, you know. And I'm not critiquing him by any stretch of the imagination. I support it completely, will help him any way I can. I've always said that about Michael Thompson. You know, I like the guy, you know. I think he's had a hard life.
No, everybody's had a hard life, man. That don't give you a carte blanche to just be a creep and a dirtbag and a government informant when you couldn't make the cut.
Michael Lynn Thompson faces a rough road ahead.
Yeah, no shit.
I hope that he gets out and just lives out the rest of his years, because he's older. I think he's like 75 years old. He's older now, and you know.
So if you go and commit some horrible crimes when you're like 25 or 30, and just because you're 75, that doesn't mean your punishment's over. He got the biggest break that he would ever get when he got out of prison after serving 45 years. Okay, and I'm not saying the guy might not even be a likable guy if you met him in his personal capacity. Like if you were in the cell next to him, maybe he's a likable guy. I've never been in that situation. I don't know the guy, and honestly, I don't want to know him, because everything that I think of when I think of gangster, this guy goes 100% against it, all right? And he's still trying to make money off of his past criminal activity by doing YouTube and whatever the case may be. I wouldn't go to any of his seminars. I wouldn't want him to be a life coach for me. And yeah, that's just my take on the guy.
At the end of the arc, and I wish him well. I do wish him well. I hope that he gets out. He's prolific at creating content, that he's able to succeed in YouTube and our other social media platforms, are just do what he does and live a normal life, trying to live a normal life. I don't know that that's really possible after the lives we've lived, but I mean, you can acquire some semblance of normalcy and live in peace. And I hope that he finds that peace. I know that there's been a lot of turmoil in media surrounding and swirling around him, and he's going to receive some when he's released. I think that everybody's going to run out there and do a video, like, Michael Thompson released.
I'll be doing another video when it gets released.
They're going to make his whereabouts known because he no longer has protection. But, I hope that he goes out there and just sails off into the sunset with his wife, with his beautiful wife, and they live the rest of their life in peace. But that was the gist of it. Michael Thompson.
It's probably part of the scam too,
Parole eligibility review on December 17th, 2025. He was denied. His admission date was on May 9th, 2025. And he had a relatively short sentence. I believe that he received credit for time served for house arrest and when he was on a GPS system. So I think he received credit for time served, plus he's a nonviolent parole offender, so he has certain time cuts coming. I don't think he's going to receive any breaks. He's not going to receive any breaks in terms of time cuts unless they are mandated by the laws of California if he participates in work programs or rehabilitative programs. I know that he's going to face a very difficult parole. He's going to have GPS. He's going to go out on another 3-year ankle monitor, and that's pretty rough. That GPS device on your ankle, and it's very difficult. It's uncomfortable. You have to hide it.
I mean, what do you expect?
When you're at a restaurant or something, and your pat leg
get a pat on the back.
You see it there, and there are a lot of constraints in that.
Yeah, because you're on parole.
In custody,
you're not free.
Because you're literally in custody when you're on parole. And your parole can be revoked for any reason. And if Michael Thompson missteps in any way, his parole will be revoked. I'm certain that DAPO, the Division of Adult Parole Operations, is livid that he ran this scam and he got over on them. BPH is livid that he ran this scam and got over on them. The governor's office is livid that they released him and he recidivated. A lot of people were disappointed.
Yeah,
and embarrassed that they went out on a limb for him and he essentially, shoved pie in their face. So he's going to face some difficulties when he's on parole. It's not going to be an easy parole for him. He's going to be on high control parole probably. He's a PIC case. Obviously, it's a public interest case. So he's got a hard 19, even if he only has a couple of months to do. Hard 19 is a classification score where your custody level means that you can't go to a level 1, housing, dorms, all that stuff. There's a lot of restrictions. You can't work outside the gate, all kinds of stuff. So he has all these restrictions, all these administrative designations that are placed on him by the CDC, and DAPO will place a shit ton on him as well. They're not going to give him the room to do anything. And I think he's prepared for that. Look,
I hope he's prepared for it because that's what his future entails.
Far better than life inside the prison, right? And I can't even fathom what it would be like to return to prison. To see the day room from your window, or look out the opaque window that you can't see anything out of unless there's a chip on the opacity of the window.
They do the same thing in the feds when you're in the hole, like the window's frosted so you can't see outside. I mean, you can see if the sun's up or not because it's bright. But other than that, you can't see anything outside your window. I just wanted to bring you this follow-up because I did a prior video on Michael Thompson, and I've been scouring the web and looking for information so I could bring this follow-up video to you. I finally found it by way of this guy's channel. And I just wanted to bring this to you and give you a little update. Michael Thompson will be out of jail again probably the next year or so, I would imagine. Maybe a year and a half or so. And it wouldn't surprise me if he gets out and ends up going back. But we'll see how it plays. I'm going to keep you posted. So until next time, thanks for watching. Stay up. Peace.